Welcome to the final case in this series, which involves parties, patients, and paying attention. This is a case that's probably familiar to most of you. It's a 71-year-old female who had cataracts. She was a little bit concerned about the expense of her intraocular lens because her neighbor, who recently had surgery, obtained a multifocal intraocular lens. This was pretty expensive for our patient, and she was concerned about whether it was worth it to pay all that money. So she'd kind of been going back and forth about whether to get a multifocal IOL, pay that extra money, and hope to have no glasses postoperatively, or have a monofocal IOL, and just accept the fact that she would need glasses afterwards. The patient's A scan was scheduled in December, and the day of her appointment just happened to be the day of an office holiday party. So the staff was allowed to wear festive attire that day. The patient felt that during the A scan, there were several interruptions during her measurements, such as another staff member coming in to comment on the tech's attire, or asking about the location of some of the decorations. And she felt that these interruptions affected the measurements of her calculations and affected the outcome of her surgery. In addition to that, there were a bunch of pre-op obstacles. She had referral problems. There were some difficulties in getting her surgery scheduled on the day she wanted. And when it came down to it, her surgery was delayed 1 month from the date that she had expected to have her surgery done. Well, fortunately, from all the numbers issues, she turned out great. She had great vision at near J1. She was able to see 20/25 at distance. So from that standpoint, everything seemed great. But the patient felt that she couldn't drive at night, and this surgery absolutely ruined her life. So she wrote a letter to the practice and also to the medical board. And I think it's important for all of us to reflect a little bit on what her letter contained. One of the things she said was that the doctor and the staff gave the tone and expression that gave her the impression that she was just taking way too long to decide about what kind of IOL she wanted. There were a whole lot of other points that she made in this letter. One of them was about this office party. She felt like the staff was preoccupied with the issues going on with the party rather than the important things to her, which were her measurements. She felt like she heard some of the staff talking behind her back and saying things about the fact that she had taken so long to decide. Then on top of that, this delay in getting her referral didn't help matters. And again, the expression and the tone from the doctor and the staff that she was being kind of a pain and taking too long to decide really upset her. Overall, she felt like she was a burden to the staff and that nobody really cared about her. So I think this is just a really good reminder. I mean, the doctors and the staff have to communicate. The staff have to communicate with each other. But patients can often overhear us and they can misinterpret what we're saying. So always we want to be careful about the discussions that we have during patient care time between either the office staff and each other or the office staff and the doctors. Certainly it's not a problem to have an atmosphere of fun and an atmosphere where people are happy and getting along well, but we just want our patients to realize that they're first over any issue with the holiday party or attire. Every single one of us encounters a demanding personality. There's not one person that works in the office of an ophthalmologist that hasn't met a patient that's quite a bit more demanding than another. And in addition to that, you all know that patients don't always act the same to the doctor as they do to the staff. Patients may be rude and inappropriate to the phone staff, to the check-in staff, or the technician, and then be nice as peaches to the doctor. Well, the doctor's relying on you all, or relying on the office staff, that this patient may be a red flag, because that may influence the doctor about what the patient's expectations are and whether or not they're a good candidate for surgery. So we really need to manage these expectations. Obviously, if the patient is expecting something that we can't give them, then nobody wins. The patient's going to be unhappy and we're going to be unhappy. So we really rely, again, on you, our staff, to help us watch for these demanding personalities, and especially that they may have unrealistic expectations. The doctor may conclude from either his or her own experience with the patient or what you have to say to them that the patient may not be satisfied with the outcome. The doctor may have to say to the patient, I'm really not sure that you're going to be satisfied with how this surgery is going to turn out, and so I'm concerned about even doing this surgery in the first place. Or it may be that the doctor feels that surgery really isn't a good idea for this patient, partly because of unrealistic expectations. Well, of course, we always want to notice that our patients are unhappy. In this picture of my niece, it's pretty obvious. Well, it's not always as obvious as with my niece that a patient isn't that happy. So the more we can pay attention to a patient's body language and how they seem to be reacting to news or to whatever concerns they might have, this helps everyone out. An apology always goes a long way, whether this is because you've been running late or because the patient had to have a second surgery. We always want to do the best we can with empathizing with patients. And this may be something as simple as the fact that the patient had to have someone from their family come from out of town to stay with them during their surgery. So patients can sue us for anything. Often it's because they have a poor outcome. But in this particular case, it was because this woman felt that she wasn't cared for. She didn't feel that anyone was really that concerned about her. And whether this is true or not, the patient's perception can lead them to either file a claim or send a letter. And either way, this is going to take a lot of time, energy, and emotion, particularly from the doctor and often from the entire office staff. So you're extremely important setting the stage. If the front desk is rude to the patient or preoccupied with something else when the patient checks in, the patient's going to already have a feeling that they are not number one on the list, that they're just a number or they really don't matter too much to you or the doctor. So your role in making the patient comfortable, addressing their concerns, and your kindness to them can make a huge difference. Of course, we always want to listen well to our patients, notice unhappiness, as we just talked about, express our concern to the patients, and be able to empathize the best we can. I wanted to take these next few slides to review some of the things that hopefully we've learned in this case and in all 5 cases that we've reviewed in this series. Documentation is such an important factor in taking good care of patients and preventing malpractice claims. So we talked about this in the flashes and floaters case, where the patient remembered what happened, but neither the doctor or the telephone operator had any recollection of the conversation with the patient because nothing was documented. This was important in why we turned the patient away and the child that came in with a corneal laceration. Of course, your attention to details, like in this pathology case where the report was filed in the chart and the doctor never reviewed it, could have made a huge difference in the patient's life. Obviously, we all have non-compliant patients, and addressing their non-compliance, whether it's with a no-show letter or educating them as to how their non-compliance can cause vision loss in the future, is extremely important. Of course, we want to manage expectations because this will allow the patient to be happier with their outcome and at least know what to expect. Clear office policies are obviously very, very important. We talked about this with the telephone protocol when the operator and the doctor didn't remember the conversation with the patient and nothing was documented. The communication between the staff and doctors was manifested with a good example of the emergency patient who came in and the staff didn't even know that the little boy had been seen in the emergency room the night before. Following up with test results was another area where clear office policies would have been helpful, as well as communication between staff and doctors. Again, we're all a team. Everyone is here to help the patient, whether it's to evaluate, educate, or care for the patients. The ophthalmology staff is extremely important to the doctor, to the patient, and to avoiding malpractice claims and just taking overall better care of our patients. You really do affect our patient outcomes. As you've seen in some of these examples, it's the patient's vision and their lives that are at stake. So thank you to each and every one of you for what you do for your doctor and your patients every single day. Please feel free to email us with any questions that you have. And thank you so much for your participation in this course.